There's a couple things about this whole thing that have always really bothered me, and then there's certain things that have set heavy on my mind and in my heart. And one of the big things was the use of CS gas. Again, as a veteran, when you go through basic training, you go through the gas chamber, and it's one of those things. It's a controlled environment, and so when you hear the government, or if you watch a documentary, and some of these, I've heard some of these FBI agents say, well, the plan was because they don't make gas masks for children. What the plan is we'll go ahead and insert CS gas, and those mothers' maternal instincts would kick in, and they'd bring those precious babies out. They even say it, those precious babies. And I honestly, I can't fathom that, when I hear that, it's like, whoa. Your plan is predicated on gassing babies. I mean, unpack history and just think about just historically when babies were gassed and how bad that was. Even take a step back and think about recently we just launched missiles at Syria. For what? For gassing babies. Like, we literally just launched missiles at another country for gassing babies. But our own government's plan was predicated on gassing babies, gassing little children until the mommies bring them out. Which again, like I say, in the military, you're in a controlled environment. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, I had guys that were twice my size. And when the gas rolled in, they went down like a sack of bricks. I literally had a guy run from behind me, run into a wall, and practically knock himself out. Fortunately, in the military, you have a drill sergeant to take you out. That is not the case in this. These are civilians. These are women. These are children. And especially the thing that bothers me the most is the concentrations that were used were ridiculous. They used a 2-day supply of CS gas in a 4-hour window in an enclosed environment. I can tell you firsthand, on the CS canisters, right on it, it says open air use only. And you're going to use it in an enclosed environment and just, flood the place with a 2-day supply, and nobody said anything. It's just like, keep it going, keep it going. That's 80 times any kind of military application. Those are fatal doses. And it really dawned on me when I started going through all the individual autopsy reports, and you see these autopsy reports where there's a bunch of children, and they weren't shot, but they got no carbon monoxide in their system. Like, you can tell the people that died in the fire. Flip through the tox screen on the autopsy report, and it says, carbon monoxide positive. But then you start hitting these kids, these children, and it says carbon monoxide negative. It'll say cyanide positive. Well, how do we get cyanide positive? Well, you get cyanide positive when either CS gas burns, or if it's in a really, really high concentration, you get these levels where, we're a bunch of children that were literally gassed to death by our own government. And that's one of the things that's really, really come to bother me. First off, the ridiculousness of the plan. I cannot fathom that not one person, when they were gathered around, because there's a planning session that goes into this. They don't just say, hey, what do you think about chucking tear gas in there? These are planning sessions. And I cannot fathom that at some point, while they were gathered around the planning table, coming up with this ridiculous idea, not one person had the courage to stand up, raise their hand, and say, hey, I'm not gassing babies. Not one person in the government had the courage to stand up and say, hey, it is wrong to gas a child. And they talk to these children. I've read thousands of transcripts of FBI transcripts where they say, hey, Cyrus is an 8-year-old kid. Hey, Cyrus, is your dad around? They're talking to these children. They were talking to them back and forth. How are things going for you inside there, Cyrus? So you're going to talk to this little 8-year-old little boy and still be okay with gassing him.
I'll just add, I think the people who were talking to the children were the negotiators. They were not the ones who planned the assault or even approved of the assault. So I want to make that distinction. But I want to ask you a question. A moment ago, you said that the children were not shot. I think the autopsies indicate that some of the children, some were shot.
Some were even stabbed. Dylan Gent was stabbed.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So what's your thoughts on that? Some children in the concrete room, a former vault.
So here,
some were shot, and one might have been stabbed.
I'm pretty, yeah. So, okay, there's a couple things going on with the autopsy reports. This is what I personally found. And then, like I say, I've gone in depth with these things. Um, I do think there were some mercy killings in there. I absolutely think there were some mercy killings in there. With some of the autopsy reports, I actually have genuine issues with some of the findings in the autopsy reports. Some of the children in the concrete vault, this is what I found firsthand from going through there. It appears to me that there's two waves of bodies in the concrete room. First wave comes in there, they are either crushed or gassed to death. There's like clearly two waves of bodies, and if you read them, some of them, you read the tox reports in there, some of them have carbon monoxide, other ones don't. So you can clearly tell there were two waves of people. The first wave that was in there huddled up. When the tank rammed, the structure ceiling comes down on them, crushes them. So you have some crushings and you have some gassings. There was no carbon monoxide on their tox screens, which tells you they were dead before the fire started. Then it appears that there's a second wave, and the second wave, most of those bodies are by the door. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they ran through the door, ceilings collapsed, but they're trapped in there. And so they die from smoke inhalation. The bodies aren't that burned up, and so they clearly died from smoke inhalation. So that's where you can kind of tell the difference, that there was two sets of bodies in there. And like I say, in the body mappings, you can see the ones closest to the door have the carbon monoxide poisoning.